Today we have Luka Hocevar on the podcast. He's an entrepreneur, gym owner, business coach, and author, and has been in the fitness industry for 20 years. He's the founder of Vigor Ground Fitness and Performance in Seattle, Washington, and founder of Vigor Ground Gym in Slovenia, where he's originally from. Both gyms are recognized as leaders in coaching and have transformed over 8,000 clients since 2006. Luka is also the creator of the Vigor Ground Fitness and Business Summit, one of the fitness industry's most respected educational events for coaches and gym owners. He's been featured in media outlets like Men's Health, Stack Magazine, On It Magazine, Entrepreneur Magazine, HBO Real Sports, Precision Nutrition, as well as CBS, Fox, USA Today, ABC, and has also been Seattle's top fitness expert for King 5, New Day, Northwest. Luka's personally coached over 3,000 clients, from pro athletes to everyday folks just looking to feel better. He's developed quite a presence on social media, now with over 100,000 subscribers on both YouTube and Instagram. He's also the host of Vigor Life podcast on all major streaming platforms. He's had quite an athletic background himself, playing professional basketball in the elite European leagues, as well as the NBA Summer Pro League. He's built a number of other businesses and products, as we were just talking about off air as well. We'd be here all day naming them. Most importantly, he has an incredible story of growing up in Slovenia and overcoming many challenges to get to where he is today. And he's going to share those challenges on today's episode. We're grateful to have him on. Luka, welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. That was a mouthful. I'm like, it's some of those are a little, because it's off sites a little. The numbers are probably even more today, but I mean, sometimes people are like, what do you do? And I just honestly, I simplify it. I'm like, look, I train people, right? And then I help others be better at training people and building their training business. That's really kind of like the buckets. And I always feel like, I don't know, my philosophy, it's funny, like we're just starting this conversation, but currently I'm hiring 2 new coaches. I had a possible intern come in yesterday. They're young and they're 22, 23, 20. And it's like, everybody asks you, like, what do I need to do to succeed, this, that, the other. And everybody asks about things like social media, building brand, which, by the way, I feel like it's important, but for any coach that's listening, if you're a brick and mortar owner or you're a coach, that you train people in person, I mean, this would sound it maybe corny or cliche, but how do you build a great book of business? It's you promise, you deliver, you promise, you deliver, you promise, you deliver, you promise, you deliver. You do that consistently. And today I would even say, I mean, I would challenge you to meet expectations, and you do it consistently. Like in a year, you'll be packed. Your book of business will be full. You'll have a waiting list. And it's simple when I say it, but it's really hard to do. And I think it's the biggest opportunity for a lot of folks. And notice how I didn't mention, like, you could do that without having 7 different social media accounts, and things of that nature. Now, again, it's not like I don't believe it. And obviously, I believe in it. I mean, I've been working to get, I don't know, Facebook's close to 300,000, YouTube's over 100,000, Facebook, IG's over 100,000, podcasts is, pretty damn big, and email lists and blah, 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 all that stuff, right? Like, but that's the long game. That's the long game. So if you're a coach today and it's like, hey, I want to do better, I want to build my business up. I think, because of technology and I mean, what you can do with this thing right here, it's not like you got to be like a full-time all-day content creator. You can spend 30 minutes a day, 45 minutes a day creating quality, useful, valuable content, and just be super consistent with it. And like 3 years from now, some really good things will happen, and I purposely say that 3 years, because I want people to be like, oh man, that's a long time. Okay, cool. If you're not willing to do that, you're probably not going to be successful anyways, whereas if you're doing, with the in-person stuff, man, like, you get 3 clients in the next month and you do a great job. And when I say great job, it's not like you're going to help them lose 40 pounds in a month, but they can feel better. They can start feeling and seeing some results. I don't know, pant size goes down, but more so it's like the customer experience. They feel safe. They feel heard. They feel taken care of. They feel appreciated. You do all those right things, and boom, you get 1 or 2 referrals, right? And then you figured out some of the guerrilla marketing tactics and the boots on the ground stuff, and maybe some paid advertising and things like that. But honestly, it's like, if you do all those baseline things, which is what I still teach to this day a lot, all of a sudden it's like 6 months from now, it's like, whoa, man, I got a busy schedule, right? And I got more people that want to work with me. Holy shit, sometimes I can't even take people. And I feel like it's an inverted pyramid, right? Where I think a lot of folks put so much of their time on social. And somebody's like, dude, how are you preaching to the choir when you're the person that does this? But like, we can dive into what I believe, at what point in time you go more that route and how much time you should dedicate to it. But I really think that, like, to be successful locally, right? Meaning you coach out of a gym, you're a gym owner, you lease out of a space, whatever it may be. Like, your reputation has to be local. Like, that's what's gonna make you successful, right? It's local reputation. And can content help with that? Yes, it can. I believe it can, but it doesn't hold a candle to, having 40 people going like, oh my God, you gotta go train with my trainer. Right. And then you post a story of them getting a PR and then they repost it. To me, that's the social that works, by the way. Right. It's like, which I highly recommend, is like, like, find your clients doing awesome shit, and highlight it through video, highlight it through, stories, tag them. Of course, they're going to share it. You're proud of them. You're proud of them, and they share it. And then 400 of their friends see it. And they go like, damn, you're looking good. Damn, you're lifting. Wow. Like, what are you doing? Come check out the gym with me. Right. Because this is a real stat, by the way. 93% of all referrals are still offline. Right. And the way that it happens is, by the way, it's like they see stuff online, but then they'll text their friend, or they'll talk to their friend and like, yeah, you got to come check out the gym with me. So I really think that, I'm actually glad that we kind of even started in this direction, because I see the mistakes made, and it's what I said at the beginning. I teach the things that I do. I don't want to teach anything I don't do. I don't want to read a book and then be like, I read this book and like, here's all this stuff in the book. And somebody goes like, oh, cool. Do you do that? Like, no, I don't actually do any of it, but I read it. For training, I continue to this day to train people. I love coaching. It's why I haven't pulled myself out of business, not because I can't, but I love coaching, and I'm, coach high level NFL guy and pro teams, and, and kids and teachers and whoever, so I can continue to get better at the craft of coaching and then teach that craft. Right. And like, I run businesses like every day. I'm running different businesses, brick and mortar, online. I'm a landlord. I got 7 tenants here now. You're trying to get more in. Right? I'm doing that and dealing with the obstacles and struggles of it. And then I teach it. And sure, I study all the time, but then it's like, the only thing that really makes sense is that once you study and learn something, is that you apply it, and then you get experience and wisdom from it, where I think there's so much of that stuff where people are talking about like, you should do this. Oh, cool. Can you show me how you did it or where you went wrong? Well, I haven't really done it. But I read that somebody did it. It's like the application of things. It's the same reason that I know I'm kind of riffing a little bit, but I see a lot of podcasts today, which is awesome, by the way. I think this is great that there's been an uptick in, health, mental health, and longevity. Right. But I'll listen to some prominent figures talk about like, well, we found this research and this research and this and this. And it's like, this is very in the ether, because once you coach people, like, taking that research and helping people apply it into like real life is a whole different ballgame. Right. So it's like, yeah, no, let me tell you all this studies. Okay, cool. Now get Susie, who's got 2 kids, is, working 2 jobs, and has, I don't know, 45 minutes, 3 days a week for her to go to the gym or whatever else it may be, and is struggling with, XYZ, to apply all these different, things that are gonna help her out. So I think that's a very, very important part of education, at least for me it is. This is my opinion, my experience. Like, you got to be actively doing the stuff to be teaching the stuff. And so that's why, like, when I said at the beginning, like, man, I continue to try to work and get better at coaching, which is the X's and O's of training and everything else, but also the communication, right? The cueing, building relationship, rapport, all the different stuff that falls under that. And then get better at the business side, which is marketing, sales, system, fulfillment, hiring, firing, all that other stuff, right? But like, I do it on a daily basis on both fronts. And then, teach kind of like the best practices from my perspective and my experience.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so many wisdoms of, and nuggets in there, right? About playing the long game, leading with value. And I think a lot of people look at you now and they see all the success that you're having, both, in your own fitness and your businesses and everything else. But, I know it wasn't always that way. There's a story, there's an upbringing that leads to this. So, I know you grew up in Slovenia, obviously, eventually ended up in the US, but obviously you went through, some challenging times and trials and tribulations growing up. So what were things like for you growing up in Slovenia?
I mean, when I grew up, it was, I try to do my best to keep the story concise, because we could really go down some crazy rabbit holes. But, I grew up, it was actually Yugoslavia, right? Before this, it broke up into Slovenia, Croatia, Serbia, Montenegro, Albania, all that, Bosnia. And so there was a war in 91. We actually, when I was 7, we actually moved to London. And so I grew up in socialism. That the interesting thing is if how the quote, comparison is the thief of joy, right? At that point in time, when you're younger, you don't really have a lot to compare to, because you don't really have a lot of channels on TV, if you even have a TV. Things are a certain way, and that's what it is. So it's like, people say, how was it to grow up in socialism? It's like, it was what it was. You don't have a comparison to like where things are better. But as you grow older. So for instance, I moved to London when I was 7. My dad got a job there. We moved there, then he lost that job. We had to move back. He stayed up there. And we kind of moved back right around where the war started in the Balkans. And very, I would say, in the midst of the horrific war, I was certainly grateful that Slovenia had the least of it, like very, very little. It moved very quick. Slovenia is very small compared to all the other countries in the former Yugoslavia, and pretty much it moved down south to Croatia, where it was bad, and then where it was the worst was Bosnia. So but in that time, I come back from London. Now I've been exposed to, even though there we lived on the low, but it's like I was exposed to non-socialism, of course. So then it's like, now you get that comparison as the thief of joy. We're like, oh man, like these people have this and that and so on and so forth. But it was, look, I think that all these things, when I look back, were very, very beneficial for me, right? I mean, I got dropped off at school. I didn't even know that we're going to be living here. I get dropped off in English school. The words that I know are basically, my name's Luka. Yes, no, a couple of things. And bam, I'm in English class. My dad's like, hey, I'll pick you up at 3:30. And I'm like, what the, so you got to figure it out real quick. There was a lot of figure it out growing up for me, right? Like, all right, we're going to throw you here in this environment. You're going to have to figure it out. Learned English very quickly, had to learn how to take care of myself very quickly, because when you're 7 and 8 years old, a lot of bullying going on. You're from a different country, got in a lot of fights. You got it. And again, I look back at that and go, like, it ended up being all good things. And then we moved back, and it was like, you're a foreigner again in your own country, right? So had to adjust to that. And basketball became one of those things that really was, I don't know, I want to say it was definitely a savior later on, which I'll share, but it was something that I gave focus to. And the thing is, I wasn't great at it. Actually, most people were taller. I wasn't like the most, what somebody would say, talented, but I enjoyed it enough, and I wanted to get better at it. And I had a chip on my shoulder to get good, because I didn't get picked. People were like, oh man, fuck, we don't want to pick this kid, So I started practicing it a lot. And it always, I try to talk about the book that's always stood out for me, that when I read it later on, which is Cal Newport's, Be So Good They Can't Ignore You. And basketball was kind of like that, where it's just like the passion hypothesis. It's not like I touched the ball and I was passionate, and like I started playing and I wasn't that good, and people were better than me, and I got pissed off, and I practiced a lot, and the more I practiced, the better I got, the more I liked the sport, right? So I think this is an important thing for people to understand, that to get really good at something, you have to put in deliberate practice, and the better you get, the more you're going to be kind of bought into it, and the more you'll actually enjoy it. So, but that's what happened. I kind of went down the route of basketball. I don't know, picking it or picking me, who knows? And that was, from age, I would say 11, one story of my life was that. And The second important factor here was that my mom opened the gym. She would work half the day at the bank, other half the day her and her friend opened a small gym. And when I look back, obviously that was a big influence for me because I was a scrawny kid. So at 13, I go to the gym, I start exercising, lifting weights. I was already playing ball and doing conditioning and all that stuff, but I never had really lifted weights and stuff. And so I go there and I had some really, really good mentors, especially when I look back at it. It was like one of the powerlifting champs in Slovenia trained there, would show me stuff, how to do it. And actually, like two of these guys, one of them was Aljaž Pegan. It's a hard name to say, but he was they were legitimately like the best in the world gymnasts. One of them like won world championships 5 times on a straddle. They'd come up there, train, show me stuff. So, at that 13, 14 years old, I'm learning like all these foundational things, basic things, and like how to work hard. From these guys, I'm put in that environment. And guess what? 6 months in, I'm like, whoa, all right, like I'm up 5, 6, 7 pounds. Man, I can jump higher. Like, hey, I can, I bumped this guy and he's flying. And I connect the two dots, right? It gives me more self-esteem, more confidence, and improves my basketball. And so that really made me obviously go, oh yeah, I'm going to do more of this. So then, I start reading books like on strength training. I go online. I mean, back then there was very little, but you did have stuff. I'm ordering books, right? Like the old stuff from Verkhoshansky and Zatsiorsky. I mean, this was probably a little bit later on, but like Charlie Francis, Speed Trap. But everything was like, how can I dunk? How can I improve my performance? And it also that was a big thing for me because I didn't really, school was not I was one of those ADHD kids. I was like, I got to read this shit. I don't want to do that. I'm not showing up. But this was stuff I wanted to learn. So it connected the dots for me. Like, hey, like I can go get a book. I can get a journal. I can get a manual and learn from the best to improve what I want. Right. So I connected like learning with liking to learn because it was for what I wanted to. So that, and that's how I kind of fell in love with the gym. And at that point in time, if you asked me about the gym, I would just be like, yeah, I do that because I'm gonna make it to the NBA. Right. So there was no, like, oh yeah, I want to be a strength coach and fitness. And I mean, that stuff in Slovenia back then, I mean, you couldn't be famous. You couldn't make money doing that anyways. Right. So, but that's how all happened. Now, overlappingly, I was also a knucklehead kid. So, from probably age 14, started getting a lot of trouble. 15, started selling drugs and getting involved in organized crime. And pretty much it was like, for me, it was ball. I kind of went to school a little bit, enough to get by with stuff, but I was also out a lot doing dumb stuff. And big part of the reason why I ended up moving to the US was, and I was already playing kind of pro ball Division II in Slovenia, getting paid a little bit for it. And my whole thing was like, I'm going to be pro. But I ended up moving, the short story of it was to get away from essentially being in trouble a lot, and how can I continue to pursue basketball and get school. So, a lot of stuff had happened that year from 17 to 18. I ended up going to this, it's called Eastern Invitational in Trenton, New Jersey, which is where, from America, high school kids go to basically trial and for scouts to see them to get scholarships. Now, I was coming from overseas because the previous year our team went and did EIBC, and it was more of like an experience for, the Slovenian basketball players, kids. Like, coach took us, we tested ourselves. I had a great time. And this coach, Wayne Jones, was like, hey, have you ever thought about going to college in the US? I was like, no, not really thinking about it. Like, I sell drugs, I make money, and I play pro basketball.
Yeah, you already got some money, right?
Yeah, I'm good. It was just one of those. I mean, I was a knucklehead at that point in time, but he was cool and really, really cool and kept following up with me. And then that year, I got in a lot of trouble. I mean, basically, it was like so many things were happening that I thankfully, my Slovenian coach, brought it to like, and he knew, and he was like, look, man, like if you keep doing this, like there's not good routes. You'll get arrested, somebody will kill you. Like it's not good. So Wayne goes like, well, why don't you come down to and we'll do 2 camps. We'll do 2 EIBCs. He lived in Denver. I was like, come to Denver, train with me for 2 weeks, then we'll go to Jersey. And I was like, all right, I got nothing to lose. I got the money, so on and so forth. So I did it, and I did really well there. I had no idea on how to I would say the college recruiting system works, because this is July. There's no more scholarships left. But I got a bunch of kind of walk-on offers from D1s, Delaware State, Quinnipiac, Western Michigan. But walk-on offers means you got to pay for the first year, right? And these schools are all like 45, 50K, and so there was no way that was happening for me. But there was a coach that used to play and then coach upstate New York at this junior college called Broome. He said, look, man, like you can play here. You'll start, like you're really good, but you can't do a full ride because they can't do that, but you'll get some stuff covered. And pretty much I was like, I think I came back to Slovenia August 3rd, and I went to the embassy and we started working on it, and I got a visa. It was a very, very like, all right, I'm gonna go do this decision. I had that epiphany. All right, this way I can still play ball, go to school. I can get away from the madness that I was kind of into the degree, and I left September 11th, 2001, which is a whole nother story because I ended up being on the flights for 9/11. I was supposed to land 20 minutes after the towers got hit, and ended up flying in there till we ran out of fuel and landed in Nova Scotia. So
where were you supposed to land originally?
It was JFK.
Okay, so you're supposed to land at JFK.
Yeah, I was supposed to land at JFK, and we at first they were like, hey, let's fly back to Frankfurt, but we didn't have enough fuel. So we flew around because airspace was closed, then landed in Nova Scotia, then ended up spending like a week in a military camp there, which was a whole story because different planes went to different locations. And then took a bus for 2 days, basically back to the city. Went back to the city, took a Greyhound up to upstate, and that's where I started my college career. And then I did 2 years up in upstate New York. I did 2 years in Southern Virginia. I got a full ride there. And then I played overseas, and the whole time, the underlying story is like I'm, obsessed with training. I'm obsessed with basketball. I'm obsessed with sports performance. And even in college, I ended up doing a minor exercise science and kinesiology because I was just, and I just added that I had so many electives that I was just like, taking everything I could to study. I was, training my teammates because everybody was like, dude, where do you know this from? Like, how do you know this? How do you know this? And I was like, man, I'm studying this stuff for the last, I'd already been studying it for like 6, 7, 8 years at that point in time, and was so into it. So the transition, happened. Like I played pro ball for a little over 3 years, and I was training people. So my last year, I played for this team called Triglav, and I would go to the gym. And at the gym, I'd be doing stuff that a lot of people are like, dude, what are you doing? Right. And I'm like, I'd start explaining stuff. And people are like, can you write me a program? Can you train me? And because I wasn't like that year, I was not getting paid. And this is a whole nother, pro sports story where people think that you're getting paid all the time and you're making buku amounts of money. But, a lot of times you have like these problems that you run into. For instance, the team doesn't get the funding that they thought they would, and they just stop paying you, and they're like, no, we'll pay you, wait, and then they're paying you slow, or they don't pay you for 3 months, and you'd go like, hey, listen, like we're gonna sue you, and then they'll tell you shit like, well, if you sue us, we're gonna go back to the third league and go bankrupt, and you won't get paid, right? I've had to sign stuff where I was paid like 8 months, owed 8 months, and I signed to get 4 where I would have got nothing. They're just pro sports isn't always what people think it is, but in that time, I was like, you know what? Cool, I'll start training you. There's people that I like, so I start training them, getting really good results. And that started kind of compounding. And now all of a sudden I got a morning basketball practice. I'm training, 2, 3 people in the afternoon. And then my brother gave me a couple of his friends that were former pro soccer guys that I started training with kettlebells, which is a whole nother story of how I started doing kettlebell training. But it started adding up. And we started training people outside in this park called Tivoli. So we just roll up, kettlebells, ropes, kegs, and it was pull-up bars on the trails. It was a cool little area, and groups went from like 2 people to 4 people to 8 people to 10 people to people walking by going like, what are you guys doing? Hey man, just come on Friday, try it out one time for free. And that came, ended up being like 2 groups of 10, 2 groups of 12. And that's when for me, like I just started getting this gut feeling, and I went to my brother and said, man, look, like there's something here. Like, I'm not even trying to promote. Like, I'm going to the gym, I'm training clients, more people are asking me to train them. I can't do it. Like I'm doing 2 practices a day and coaching sometimes for 5 hours in between, barely making any money, by the way, but I am getting paid something, right? And but the thing is, I was loving it though. I was loving the feeling of coaching. Then the groups outside in the park, that was a lot of fun for me. Because it was just a good energy, a great vibe. People. I mean, the thing that I said at the beginning is the thing that I'm talking about right now. I didn't like, there was no social media back then. There was no text message off, no nothing. Literally was people going like, yo, these crazy guys are training us. It's so awesome. Like, just come for a training session. And it grew like that. And, it took some months. And then I convinced my brother, and we bought like about 3,000 euros of equipment, and we leased a 470 square foot room. They kind of say the rest is history, but what we got that place pretty busy in kind of before and after work times. And then we went to 2,200 square feet. And that's when I ended up leaving to go to the US, because I had been engaged to get married to my college sweetheart, and I had to make a call. It was a very, very tough decision. And, I left, and I kind of started from scratch, and I had to, I started working at LA Fitness, from there Vision Quest, and again started kind of like that story to where it is now, where my first gym, now it's going to be 15 years in October is when I opened up the first gym, Vigor, and it was 900 square foot garage, basically no windows, black mold. I mean, you can go back and look at the pictures of it. So I was there for about 3 years, went to a 4,700 square foot space, much bigger, much nicer in the strip mall. Was there for 5.5 years, and actually we just had the anniversary of 6 years of opening here. Not since I bought the building, because I ended up buying the whole building. And that's compressed. That's the compressed story, but hopefully it gives some insight on where all this is coming from. And the reason why, I kind of worked every aspect of the industry that you can. We were the first gym in Slovenia that does coaching memberships. And that is a gym where you come and it's like everything is training, but there's a membership, right? Like we were the first of its kind. They told us it wouldn't work. They told us, there's no gyms like this because there's no market. So you guys will fail. I'm a pretty hard-headed person, probably the most hard-headed person you'll meet. But I was like, nope, we're gonna do this. And now we're the standard in that country. We've moved 4 or 5 times. We have 500 members, 11,000 square foot gym. We train Olympians, we train pro teams, we train Gen Pop. We're the number one education gym in the country. We employ 15, 16 people full time, which in Slovenia is unheard of. That's unheard of for a non. This is a non big box gym, and I'm very, very, very proud of that. And I started here, and so you talk about big box gyms and where you start from scratch and working 100-hour weeks. Did it? Did the whole shebang. So the reason I say that is because, teaching today, I think that the goal is to merge the old with the new. Like, what's always worked and will continue to work, but then not ignoring like the progress and the technology and all the things that we have available to us. I mean, I during the launch of one of the courses that I did really well, I ended up buying a studio, and I was talking to the guy that, I'm not super, I'm techie, but I don't know what camera equipment to get and, what switchers to get and all that stuff. So we had a guy that's like very high level that came in and basically, was like, hey, what's your budget? I'm like, I don't like 15 grand, 18 grand, ish. Right. So he's like, all right, I'm gonna get the best stuff for that. I mean, we're talking about a full blown, pretty much video studio. Right. And, we're sitting there and he says, hey, Luka, like this switcher right here, this little box right here, this 10 years ago, 12 years ago, that was $30,000. Right. This one thing, right? Like the cameras that you're getting, we're talking about, we got some of the best cameras. It's like, one of these cameras was 30K. So now, it's like, it's allowing small business coaches, to become, to be able to do things, podcasts like this, go on this camera on this phone, right? 5 years ago, that camera was like 3-4 grand. Now it's in your phone, right? So to basically go like, oh, forget about social media and this, that, like, no, that's dumb. But, gelling the two, because for me, it's like, as I grew up, I had none of these things. I know what worked. And it's like, that still works because we're dealing with humans. Right.
Kind of
And I think,
actually, I was going to say, kind of expanding on that. Sorry to interrupt. One thing that I think is a recurring theme that you've kind of talked about is like your ability to play the long game with everything and really like delay gratification. Like from, when you first started in basketball, like, you weren't one of the better kids and you got better. Like when you first got here, you kind of built things from the ground up. And a lot of people, you want to lose 30 pounds in the next 90 days. They want to build 7-figure business in the next 6 months. But you've been in the industry for 20 years. Like your own fitness journey, in basketball and everything else has been a long journey. Like, where'd you develop that mindset that it's okay, I don't have to have everything now, like it's okay to delay that gratification, and I know that I need to work in order to get there?
That's a good question. Looking back, I think that we all have different types of fuel, right? I think that it's important. I think that at the beginning of my life, the fuel probably wasn't the greatest. Meaning, but it got, it's like it got me somewhere, because you can take fuel and you can put it towards negative things and positive things. I've done both. But if you have a chip on your shoulder and you want to just be seen, like, hey, I was the youngest of three. We grew up in socialism. It's like, I want, like, hey man, I'm special. So then that's the driving force. Like, I'll show you. It's like, what would you say? I had for a long time this problem. You tell me I can't do something, I'm going to do it, even if it's not my fucking goal. I'm just like, what'd you say? Okay, head down. And so I think that's where it came from. And by the way, like, I don't think that's a bad thing, right? Thinking about a lot of people that have gone through trauma, and they've gone through pain, and we all have to some degree, right? Some more, some less, some more frequently, some less frequently. But it's like there's an ability to take that fuel and maybe negative feelings and emotions, and put it towards something positive. Because I've also put it towards crime. I've also put it towards hurting people and dumb stuff, right? And so I think there's, and in life, like, nobody escapes, nobody escapes unfathomed. There's no, or should I say, untouched, right? And so when something happens to you, the ability to be able to put that towards something positive, I think that's a skill set. And you have to have an anchor. Now the anchor is like, why does that matter to you? Today, what do we do with our clients? Hopefully, right? They go, hey, Luka, I'm here. I want to lose 30 pounds. Oh, that's amazing. Why is that important to you? Right? I'm going to peel the onion. Oh, okay, that's great. Why does that matter? Right? I'm going to keep going until it's like, you know what? I feel like I'm a shitty role model for my kids. Right? That's a deep anchor. Like, losing 30 pounds because you want to fit in your jeans, sure, important. But like, man, I want to change because I want to be a role model of what health and fitness is for my children. That's grabbing at your soul. So I think, discovering your anchor is an important part. Now, again, what I was saying is, like, my anchor, when I was younger, it was like, I'm going to prove all of you wrong, right? Oh, you're not going to pick me, or you're going to tell me that I suck. I'll tell me I'm never going to make it. You're going to, and it was effective. Now, I'll say this: as you grow older, that can come back to bite you in the ass, which it did for me, because, later on, I got married very young. I got divorced, did a lot of dumb things, and that took it. And again, some of that, like, I'll show you, I'm going to keep striving, because once I achieve this amount of money and success, then everything will be okay. And I'll be willing to burn things to the ground, going in that direction. And then I learned very painfully is that, like, that's not the way to go. And I, in my early 30s, went to therapy, joined the Wake Up Warrior, did a lot of difficult, hard work on myself. And as a man, it's hard to say, hey, I need help. Hey, like, I'm not good over here, man. Like, I don't know what to do. Can somebody help me and guide me? Right. It was one of the most powerful things for me, and not just in my personal life, but for business, and also as a coach. Right. Because you think about, like, the people, in fitness is very easy to become like, I'm the fitness guy. Listen to me. Look at you. You're out of shape, and that was a massive lesson, where it's just like, yeah, but I'm fucked in all these different areas. Right. Like, maybe I got my fitness in check, but man, like, what about, for a lot of coaches, their finances aren't in check, right? their mental and emotional state's not in check. They have traumas that they haven't dealt with, and then all of a sudden they project in in all types of different ways onto others and onto their clients. So it was a huge lesson. So
what were
again,
what were one of the two of the things that you learned about yourself through that personal development work that helped you kind of step forward and feel like you weren't holding on to some of those traumas?
I mean, so I'll give some resources because I've done a lot of work, and a great book by Byron Katie called Loving What Is. I think everybody should read it. There's another one called from Debbie Ford. I actually became a shadow coach, Debbie Ford, Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And this is another great one. It's like why good people do bad things. And all of those, like, look, all of those help you recognize, because I mean, how many times do you know somebody that has done something dumb, right? Or bad, right? Quote unquote. I mean, pretty much everybody at some point in time, right? Some people just stay in that loop, and it's a defensive mechanism. It's it's nature, it's nurture. And for me, like going down into those areas and going like, for instance, deflecting and blame, looking at yourself and going like, whoa, hey, you're enough. You're doing these things because you're trying to show everybody else that you're enough because you don't believe that you are. So these accolades, like, look at my car, I make XYZ amount of money, like that, I was featured in this thing, and whatever it is that you can use to be like, see, that's what it was a big thing for me. It's like, see, I am enough. See, I made it, And then, but the thing is like, then you go new level, new devil. You got to prove more. You got to prove more. So, getting to a point where it's like, you start understanding like, hey, like I'm enough as it is right now. Like here's all these past things that made me have, want to prove myself. But, it's like, and sometimes it was my environment. Sometimes it was parents, and it's not because they wanted to do you wrong. It's because of how they grew up. Right. And they passed certain negative things on to you. They only did it because they wanted the best for you. This is only the only way they knew how. Right. And once you recognize those things in and of itself, it can kind of dissolve some things away. Right. And look, there's practices, and just like anything else, look, we understand as coaches, you go to the gym, you lift weights consistently, you get stronger, right? You do sprint work, hey, you get faster, you put better things in your body, and your body's healthier, and you lose body fat, whatever it may be, right? Okay, but what about mental and emotional health? Like, what do you do for that? And a fitness person might be like, yeah, go to the gym. And hey, yes, absolutely. Like that is helpful. But what about, reading certain things and journaling and going to therapy and, getting, and whether it's, I am a fan of, especially guided psychedelic stuff, which I've done too, where it's like, hey, what are these other ways that you're working on yourself, mentally, emotionally, even maybe spiritually, if you're a religious person, right? That becomes a practice. And a lot of people that I talk to, when you talk to them, they're like, no, I don't really do anything. I'm like, oh, so you're not getting into the weight room, like you're not going into the mental weight room and an emotional weight room, right? You're just going into the physical weight room. And, I was a very fit, strong dude, but I hadn't exercised those other things, right? Mindset to a degree for sure, like at least as an athlete, and like how to get shit done, how to overcome, be resilient, disciplined. Yeah. But in the other areas of life, I did not. Right. And just because you have a great skill set in, eating right and training right, doesn't mean that you have a skill set in being great at relationships, being great at being organized, structuring your time, like all these other areas. So whatever it is that you want to improve, you want to have a intentional practice for it. And the same thing comes to your, mental and emotional health. I mean, I think it's way better today. 10 plus years ago, it was still like, you go, I mean, I initially, I didn't say it, right? When I went and got a therapist, because it was just like, oh, I'm going to therapy. People like, oh man, is everything okay? Like, something wrong with you? Now, obviously you go because you don't feel like you're okay. But today I'm like, if everything is okay, like, is it bad to see a therapist? No, that's your mental and emotional coach. Just like you go and see, you know, and hopefully a great coach in the gym is also like your mental coach, right? But again, like there are specific people that can help you better in specific areas. Same thing. You don't go to a fitness coach and go like, hey, listen, my finances are fucked. Like, how do we, you know, how do we solve this? You know, like I'm not good with financial literacy and management, right? You go and get somebody that might help you out with that. So, and thankfully, it's again, it's not as much, it's not as stigmatized today as it was, but it still is, because I have friends that are, you know, strong, you know, successful in this, that, and they're like, hey man, like, you know, what do you think about, you know, I was thinking about maybe getting a therapist, you know, just like almost like whispering it. And now, but they say it to me because I've publicly talked about getting help. And, you know, there's friends that have listened to a podcast episode I'm on, and you know, years ago, and they're like, man, I didn't know that you did that. And that how long did you go for? What was it like? What about this? Oh, you did psilocybin as well. Oh, what about, you know, and then they become more open because they're like, listen, man, like I'm struggling with, you know, fill in the blank, and they feel like they can share it with me. And that's why one of many reasons that I'm very open to talking about all this stuff on shows, because initially it was very, very difficult. You know, it was very, like at the beginning, talking about you know, being a criminal and some of the things that I've done, and like cheating and fucking up my marriage and stuff. Like, I mean, I had so much not just guilt but shame attached to it. Right? It was very, very difficult. And again, going through therapy and going through the Wake Up Warrior program helped me and challenged me to get some of those things out. Right? And as always, what happens when you share, I mean, you get a lot of support, but you also get persecution, right? And I got some persecution, which, look, that's life. But I tell you what, you know, the moment I started talking about it and like sharing my lessons from it, it was, man, like a 200-pound, you know, barbell rolling off my back. And the more I did it, the more it kind of rolled off my back. And the more people came and said stuff, you know, it'd be like, hey man, I heard this, like, and then they tell me something that they're struggling with or they struggle with and how they, you know, related to it. And this is why I'm saying that I became a better coach to my clients, because I truly became more empathetic and compassionate, because I started looking at it from a like, hey, like they're struggling with something, you know, I'm not struggling with the same thing, but man, do I completely understand what it's like to struggle with something. And it's, holy shit, has it been difficult for me to change, you know, the things that I was fucking up in my life. Right. And so instantly it was like, I shouldn't say maybe instantly, but like more and more, I just started really being able to connect with people, listen, and like, again, listen in that space, because I remember myself being a coach, very, very good at the training, the X's and O's. I could tell you everything to do, but where I'd be judgmental, you know, and maybe not even openly, but be like, man, how the hell can't you get your shit together? Like, man, you got type 2 diabetes, you got all these different things going on. Like, man, you got 3 kids, you know, you should be a role model. And here you are doing this dumb stuff, right?
Yeah.
Boom, just projecting. But in my own life, here I am in another area doing the exact same thing, maybe even worse, right? And so that's why, listen, that's why it's so important. Like, I think it was Dax Moore, a good friend and mentor back in the day, said, hey, you know, these are the stages that you should go through. First, tell the truth about yourself to yourself. Then tell the truth about yourself to somebody else. And only then can you tell the truth about somebody else to them, right? Because a form of sedation is giving other people advice. How many times do you, I mean, like somebody's going, man, you should do this. Are you doing that? Well, no, but right. Because why? That's a form of sedation. Like, I'm going to keep talking about others, keep giving advice to everybody, but because I don't want to deal with it myself. All this shit, I'm telling people what to do, but I'm not doing it myself, you know? And as, can't remember who told me this, but say, hey, the greatest wisdom is taking your own advice. Right. And this is so true. It's like people avoid telling the truth about themselves to themselves. And that, you know, when I said I needed help, that was like, you know, that was the truth to myself. Dude, you're like, if you keep going on like this, it's not going to be good. Right. And then, you know, then again, you get to a point where you go and tell that truth to others. And only then, you know, and as you're working on yourself, right? Because it's true. Like, if you work on yourself, you become a better person, better human, better coach for everybody else. and you should be an example of it, right? Like if you're coaching people to work on the things that are challenging in their lives, shouldn't you work on things that are challenging? This is why I do take the pause and drink some caffeine. It's like, make the point. Oh.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I know we've covered like a variety of topics today, and I love that your vulnerability there. And you shared so many things about overcoming your own struggles and challenges from growing up to as an adult, and proof that you can work on yourself even if it wasn't right away, but it was even in your 30s. And there are definitely so many other directions we could go on. I know we're running up on time here, so I want to finish with obviously everyone's been listening to this right now. Probably can resonate with a lot of what you can say. For those who haven't heard of you before, where can people find out more about you?
I mean, social, like I would say that most of my main kind of hub is certainly Instagram. So at Luka Hocevar, LukaHocevar. If you go to YouTube and just type in my name, it's my channel. Like if you want to go through, I think it's at 1,600 videos now. You got plenty to go through for the next 5-6 years.
I've been through quite a few, yeah.
Yeah, and we keep, that's one of the things too, is like every day we drop a new short, and every week to 2 weeks we drop a new vlog that's a little bit more in depth. And it goes both ways for coaches and for kind of like fitness enthusiasts. And then the Vigor Life podcast, I drop a new episode there weekly. And we're currently transferring, so like all my courses, workshops, actually been launching some really cool stuff. Lives on lukahocevar.com. So right, literally for about a week, I don't know when this podcast is going to drop, and it's going to be down because we're doing a ton of shifting. But then when it's back up, I got a small group personal training mastery course there, and then there's program design course, conditioning workshops. There's a lot of different stuff, and it's going to keep accumulating. So, and with that said, look, I think I always like to leave with something that people can take. When I go on shows or podcasts or anything else, I really, really hope that if you listen to something and something hits you, that like the most important thing is for you to go do something, right? Because the amount of times that you're like, wow, that was, I heard this thing and it mattered, and I really should do that, and you don't go do anything, right? And so you have to connect learning to action, and like that's a skill set. The more often you do it, so whatever you heard that might have been like, I got to go do something, like go do that thing. Go do that thing now, because I think it's so important that I think that when people say what's the meaning of life, I think it's one of them for sure, if not the main one, is expansion. It's progress. It's getting better, right? And when you get better and you're progressing, you feel better, right? And you're more fulfilled and you're happier, period. Like we know this. So take action on it, no matter how small. I don't know, schedule a therapy session, go do some I would say boots on the ground marketing, if that was the thing that's hit you. Buy one of the books that I said, and then start diving into that. If you felt like that you're in that kind of space, go do something, and again, gain momentum, keep momentum, and keep doing that every time you learn something. And I promise you, a year from now, you'll be in a different place.
Love it. Love it. Well, thanks so much for your wisdom and for your time today.
A pleasure, man.